Soma is a complete nerd with no girlfriend, like me, who gets transported to a magical world by the king, who wants to sacrifice him in order to make sure his kingdom survives. Soma puts his brain to use and is not only able to save his own life, but also becomes the new king, who gets to marry the princess and start his own harem, while trying to stop a massive all-out war which is about to happen. Soma is a total nerd who lives with his grandfather in modern-day Japan and is a very realistic person when it comes to planning. This pictureless guy is always studying in the library, as he wants to be one day. When he was in a library, he went over to get a book off the shelf when suddenly a bright light appeared on top of him. He seems to be visibly confused at this occurrence, but before he could do anything, he was sucked inside of it, and the very next moment he was falling down from the sky in a totally unknown land. He is super scared, thinking that he will die falling from this height, but surprisingly, he lands softly on the ground without any injuries. He shakes the dizziness off and notices that he is surrounded by a bunch of quoted figures looking intently at him. This scares him a bit, but he puts on a brave face and decides to bluff that he's totally in control of the situation. The CED figures escort him to what looks like a courtroom to him. He looks around and spots people wearing very dated uniforms. Some of them aren't even men, but it looks like they are a mix between animals and humans. The king, who was sitting on the throne until now, gets up and welcomes him to his kingdom, calling Soma the hero, which confuses him. The king thanks him for answering his call, but this makes Soma mad, as he never answered any calls, and he was more or less yanked from his place without his permission and brought here. The king is taken aback and asks him not to be angry at them, as they have an explanation. He explains that he is currently in a world that has witches and wizards, dwarves and elves, knights and dragons that roam world freely. Some time ago, however, a small void opened in the northern part of their continent, and suddenly a huge horde of demons started coming out of it. All of the surrounding kingdoms started combining their strength to fight against the demons, but it turns out that the demons seem to be innumerable, and no matter how many of them are killed, they always seem to be replaced immediately. But sadly, their kingdom doesn't have inexhaustible manpower, and hence they cannot keep fighting such a losing battle. Soma looks at the king and tells him that there is no way he's going to fight against the demons. The king seems embarrassed, so one of his ministers comes forward and explains to him that one of the kingdoms, known as the Chaos Empire, is the strongest of them all and has been constantly asking them for monetary support, and if they don't offer monetary support, the empire has threatened them with war. Soma asks the minister about how he is tied up with all of this, and the minister looks down sheepishly and tells him that they have decided to summon a hero and then offer it to that empire, as it is the only way they will have to pay any money, as they don't have any money. Soma is shocked beyond any measure and blankly looks at the king, who looks embarrassed. He asks the king whether this was the plan, to call a goddamn hero to his kingdom, and Soma starts thinking about what he could do to escape this situation and realizes that there is no way he can run away from here, as he will probably be caught very easily and it might become troublesome for him. He decides that he will deal with this situation logically and realistically. He looks at the king and asks him whether he knows what will happen to him once he turns him over to the Chaos Empire. The king shakes his head and says that he has no idea what would happen to him, which is definitely not what Soma wanted to hear. He asks him whether he at least knows that he will be safe when turned over to them, or if they will immediately kill him for some reason or other. They don't answer that question, which makes him realize that he cannot lead up to luck and decides to take matters into his own hands. He looks at the king and asks him about the last time a hero was summoned in this kingdom, and the minister replies that the last time a hero was summoned was 500 years ago, and since then, people have been trying but can't summon anyone. Soma immediately presses the matter and asks them what will happen after they turn him over. Will they stop demanding things from them afterwards? This shuts everyone up, as they realize that they cannot keep summoning heroes to hand them over. The king looks confused, and Soma decides that this is the moment that he has to use to get out of this problem. He looks at them and tells the king that he will help them get out of this situation, as he is the chosen one, the hero, who will lead their kingdom to revolution. Everyone is shocked at this, but Soma tells the king that he is going to check all of the financial records and set everything straight so that their kingdom can start generating more money and doesn't collapse under its own weight. Everyone rejoices at this amazing speech, and the king decides to give it a shot. They all go inside the room, and Soma realizes that he doesn't really have any plans as of now, but decides to simply take the account of all the finances from the king and the minister, so for 3 days and 3 nights continuously. They discussed all the finances for the kingdom, and he finally is able to come up with some sort of solution. The next day, they all gather in front of a massive audience where S is very sleep deprived and looks like she can sleep at any moment. The king stands beside him and declares that he, the king, has decided that Soma is more fit to rule the kingdom, and starting now, he is transferring the kingship to Soma. Everyone is shocked at this revelation, but none more than Soma, who had no idea this was coming. On top of that, the king proudly declares that to make his claim to the throne even stronger, he has decided to marry his only daughter, Liz, to Soma. Just like that, within moments, Soma's entire life was changed, and he was given the task of changing the lives of all the subjects residing in his kingdom. He sits down in his chambers and starts working on a room full of paperwork without any breaks or sleep because of the sheer volume of work. Suddenly he hears the door open and a beautiful young woman dressed in a military outfit barges in without saying anything. Soma is so tired that he doesn't even look up from his work and asks her whether she's a learned person and knows how to read and write. This takes Liz by surprise, who heatedly answers that she's a very learned person. Soma then asks her some basic math questions without looking them up, and when she's able to answer them, he asks her to help him deal with his paperwork. Liz walks up to him and announces that he is talking to the daughter of the former king. This makes Soma look up from his paperwork, and he asks her why she is wearing a military outfit. She explains that she always had a knack for combat and wanted to help on the front lines, so she enrolled herself in the military. She asks him what he did with her father, as there is no way her father would give up kingship. Soma lets out a deep sigh and tells her that he was summoned to this weird place, and he only wanted to escape being sent to the Chaos Kingdom, but her father got impressed by him and made him the king. He reassures her, however, that it won't be for long, as he doesn't want to be king and just wants to go back to his own place. He tells her that he will stay in this kingdom for 2 or 3 years, till the kingdom regains its footing and gets more stable financially. He also tells her not to worry about the engagement, as she can cancel it anytime she wants to. Liz seems impressed after hearing about his humility and decides to talk to him more cordially. He explains to her that he's already working on getting more money and has sold all the useless jewels and treasures from the kingdom's vault, as their country needs food that people can eat, and not jewels that are locked in some vault right now. Liz seems horrified and tells him that a lot of those treasures are ancient artifacts that are basically extremely precious. Soma calms her down by showing her a list of items that he has sorted and how he hasn't sold any national heritage items or any dark magic items. He's only sold basic jewelry in gold and silver. Liz seems to be more relaxed now and asks him about his next plans. Soma replies that he isn't going to send money to the Chaos Kingdom as of now, as the people living in this kingdom are still hungry and need something to eat. Liz suggests that instead of sending the money straight to the Chaos Empire, he can use it to strengthen their own military. Soma thinks for a moment and realizes that she is right. If they give the money to the Chaos Empire, they will just keep asking for more. But if they invested in their own military, they might be able to stand up to them and retake their position slowly but surely. Soma starts understanding how this world works. He took an extensive tour of the kingdom and got to know that it has a lot of hidden properties that he wasn't aware of. From the looks of it, the kingdom looks like a very old school area with no modern techniques or tools being used. But if you take a closer look, you will realize that this kingdom has a lot of the modern luxuries hidden in a different form. For example, the light bulb is a pretty modern invention that has solved the problem of illumination forever. But in this world, there is no electricity, much less a light bulb. Surprisingly, every street has a bunch of street lamps, and even at night, the houses are illuminated. This is because of the special magic that the people of this continent possess. They can create light, heat, and water at will, which comes in very handy when you think about it. He's also taken by one of the priests, who tells him to put his hand over a stupid-looking statue, claiming that if he has any affinity for magic, he will know immediately. He puts his hand over the stupid statue, and suddenly, he loses himself in reality and starts seeing a bunch of bright light spots against a black background. But he remembers that he hasn't taken any LSD, so he quickly realizes that it must be the work of magic. When he comes to, the priest tells him that he does have magical affinity, and that he should go and practice some magic, as it will make him better at it. He goes back to his chambers, where he has hired a bunch of working personnel who are able to read and write to do some paperwork. He himself sits down on the chair and starts working, but before that, he's able to play around with his magic. He transfers his consciousness into 3 pens, which immediately start doing paperwork on their own. He tries with the 4th pen, but doesn't work, making him realize that for now, 3 objects are his limit. While doing the paperwork, Liz enters the chamber to check up on him, and is surprised to see the magical pens. She asks him about it, as she has never really seen this kind of magic, but Soma tells her that he has created it just now. Liz has no trouble believing this, but before she could ask anything else, he asked her to get down to work and put a ton of paperwork on her as well. They all keep working for countless hours before Soma looks up through his baggy eyes to see that all of them have fallen asleep out of exhaustion. He walks over to Liz, who's also sleeping on the couch very cutely, and observes her for a moment before pushing some hair out of her head lovingly. Liz, however, is used to creeps like him and immediately wakes up, asking him what he was doing. Soma tells her that he just came to see whether she was asleep or not, and nothing else. The next morning, he tells her that he wants to show her something, and they both get on a horse. Liz is surprised, as usually a man is supposed to take the reins, but Soma is sitting on the back of the horse, holding her waist as tightly as possible, as he doesn't know how to ride a horse. They both go on a surprisingly romantic ride, which ends near a giant field covered in white. They get off, and Soma walks alongside Liz and shows her the fields, informing her that their entire country is filled with cotton fields like these, which are borderline useless. He explains that once, cotton used to be a very valuable commodity, so all the farmers decided to grow it on a massive scale, hoping to export it and earn a lot of money. This resulted in the entire kingdom starting to produce cotton instead of other agricultural crops. That would have been fine, as with the money earned, they could easily import food. But the problem arose when other countries also started growing cotton, leading to an increase in supply while the demand wasn't that high, causing a cotton crash where their prices dropped drastically and became worthless. This is the reason why their country is going going through such a terrible famine, and they have nothing to eat. Liz looks disheartened as she was supposed to be one of the leaders of this country, and yet she had no idea about this entire fiasco. She apologizes to him, but he tells her that she shouldn't apologize to anyone but should help him bring the country back to its former glory. They go back to the dining hall and start having breakfast together when a man called Ark introduces himself as the head of the guards. He sits down with them and asks Soma if there is anything he could do. Soma very frankly replies that not many people in this country are useful, as most of them have no idea what they are doing. He tells him that he is in serious need of more trained manpower and people with specialized abilities. Ark bows down and tells him that he will see what he can do before taking his leave. Liz and Soma later have tea, where Soma suddenly gets an idea and asks Liz whether they have any kind of broadcasting equipment. Liz has no idea what he is referring to, so he tries to explain the kind of device he means, and Liz suddenly exclaims that they have a device like that for public announcements. This will be perfect for Soma's plan, so he tells her to take him to the device as soon as possible. He explains to her that he's going to recruit a workforce from the general public. Liz tells him that they already do this, which surprises Soma, and he asks her how they select people. She replies that they have a series of written exams, and people who pass all of those are taken into the castle as workers. Soma tells her that the strategy is highly inefficient, as they are probably missing out on extremely talented individuals. He asks her how high the literacy rate in their kingdom is, to which she replies that it is around 30%. He looks at her and tells her that just written exams cannot determine how capable an individual is. It is the aptitude of the person that is important, not just literacy. He tells her that this set of exams must be controlled by high-ranking nobles who have the influence and money to send their children to the best academies to get them educated and place them in positions of power in the court. Classic nepotism. She is shocked at this revelation and asks him what he proposes to do. He tells her that she will know soon. The next day, he stations himself in front of the broadcasting device alongside Liz and starts broadcasting to the entire kingdom. He addresses his subjects and tells them that he's going to give them a fantastic opportunity to completely transform their lives. Grabbing everyone's attention, he tells them that he is initiating an open selection for people with very high aptitude, specialization, or any kind of skill that might be beneficial. He tells them that nothing else matters. They can be literate or illiterate, rich or dirt poor. All that matters are their skills, strengths, and aptitude. The next day arrives, and everyone gathers inside the court to witness the new people who will be chosen directly by the king. Soma sits on his throne with Liz by his side, and the selection begins. He notices that only 5 people have nominated themselves for the selection test. All of them bow in front of him as soon as Ark introduces the king, all except a tall, dark-skinned girl named Aisha. She claims that she is from the clan of warrior elves, and they don't bow in front of anyone to whom they haven't pledged their lives. Ark gets mad and tells her to bow down immediately, but Soma stops him and tells him to let it go. He quickly uses his special magic to remotely read everything about these elves and realizes that they are very well known and feared for their combat capabilities and are supposed to be excellent warriors. She tells him that she is one of the best fighters in her clan, making her one of the best, if not the best, warriors in the entire kingdom. She then asks Soma whether he could help her. He is taken aback and doesn't know what to say, but the elf continues, telling him that for some reason the blessed forest where they live has been deteriorating rapidly. According to her, she and her clansmen take very good care of the forest, but even then, it seems to be dying on them, and they have no clue why. She also adds that she has heard that Soma is a very intellectual person and might be able to come up with a plan to save the forest. Soma looks confused, but he quickly starts thinking and asks whether they thin the forest or not. Aisha looks at him blankly and asks what he means by that. Soma realizes that these techniques must be relatively modern and explains to her that when a forest is left to grow on its own, often the older trees end up blocking all of the canopy, resulting in no sunlight reaching the forest floor. Because of this, no seedlings or saplings can grow, the entire forest floor dies, and there are no young plants to replace older trees that might fall. This also leaves the area vulnerable to erosion and other large natural problems. Suddenly, Aisha completely bows down in front of him and tells him that she is pledging her entire life to Soma and is ready to fight for him and die for him. She tells him to please accept her as his bodyguard and to help restore the forest. Soma graciously accepts her. The next girl that comes up for trial turns out to be a beautiful maid called Juna. She is supposed to be one of the most attractive people that exist in the kingdom and is said to be the best singer that ever existed. According to the minister, Juna descends from a long line of mermaids who were extremely beautiful and used to wreck ships by luring sailors in the wrong direction with their enchanting voices. Soma realizes that if this is true, then singing must be in her blood. He calls her forth and asks her to sing a song for everyone as it is being broadcast around the kingdom. She looks up at him and tells him that she has no problem doing that, but most of her songs are sad and melancholic. Soma asks her whether she could memorize a song after just listening to it once, and she says yes. Soma quickly pulls out his phone and gives gives her an earphone to listen to one of the songs that he has on it. She seems to like the song, and it passes the vibe check. She returns the earphones to Soma, and everyone seems surprised by the new device that Soma just pulled out of his pocket. She gets ready and starts singing the song very beautifully. After the performance is over, everyone applauds her exceptional singing. Soma tells her that he is really impressed by her ability to memorize a song after hearing it once and performing it perfectly. The next person to come forward is a chubby idiot named Poncho. He seems extremely nervous and is sweating profusely. He gets up and tries to address the king, but falls after tripping over his own foot like a fool. He then gets up and explains that his special ability is that he is a glutton and has tried nearly every dish that this country has to offer. He expects Soma to laugh in his face, but surprisingly, Soma rushes down to shake his hand and tells him that he was waiting for someone like him to come along and that he is thrilled to hire him. He tells Poncho that at a time when the entire kingdom is suffering through famine, abilities like his are of great value. This really boosts Poncho's confidence, and he starts crying, saying that all his life he has been called a fatso, which, to be fair, he is. Soma, however, thinks differently and tells him that he is the one who will be responsible for bringing their country out of famine and back to prosperity. The next candidate turns out to be an emo guy who walks up to Soma and introduces himself as Kaz. He tells Soma that all the while Soma was judging the others, he had been evaluating him. He is supposed to be one of the best minds in all of the kingdom and is a fanatic about reading every kind of literature he can get his hands on. He's a very knowledgeable person, which Soma immediately realizes from the way he talks. He asks Kaz what his decision was and whether he thinks Soma is worthy of being king or not. Kaz replies coolly that all of it came down to one decision that Soma made. It all depended on whether Soma thought fat was useless or not. If he thought fatty was useless, he would have failed to be a worthy king, as he doesn't know what his kingdom needs the most right now. But surprisingly, he was extremely enthusiastic after the appearance of Fatty. This made him believe that Soma actually had some brains and wasn't just another nobody. In fact, Kaz was so impressed that he asked Soma to be his lieutenant and let him be his right-hand man and advisor. Soma is impressed by Kaz's decision-making abilities and decides to hire him as his advisor. The last person to come forth is a girl named Tomo. She was a wolf girl who is supposed to be able to talk to all the animals of every race. She seems to be very nervous and is hardly speaking for herself. Liz comments that the members of the wolf clan are never seen inside their kingdom, to which Soma replies that she could be a refugee. He asks her to speak up, but she doesn't, and she gets even more scared. Soma decides to descend his throne and walks up to her, crouching down in front of her and asks her what is wrong. She whispers in his ears that something bad is happening and says something that makes Soma's eyes widen with shock. Soma quickly regains himself and acts like nothing has happened. He gets up and starts walking back to his throne, telling them that they are all dismissed for now, but that he would like to see the girl in his chambers. Tomo, Liz, Ark, Soma, and the minister all gather around in Soma's chamber while Tomo is sitting on a couch. Soma asks the rest if they heard what Tomo told him in his ears, but all of them shake their heads, claiming that it was barely a whisper and no one could hear what she actually said. Soma lets out a sigh of relief, knowing that no one else in the kingdom heard it, as it was being broadcast all over. He tells the rest that what he is going to tell them must be kept a secret from anyone at all costs, as it might shake the entire kingdom. He finally discloses that the girl told him that she can not only speak to animals, but she is also able to speak to demons. Liz is totally shocked and tells Soma that it must be some kind of mistake, as demons speak a language that is very different from any of the languages that any of the other races speak, and there is no person alive who is able to decipher their language apart from their own kind. Soma looks at her and tells her that that is the reason why Tomo is probably one of the most important people in the entire country, more so than him. Liz asks Tomo when she learned that she could talk to the demon race, and she replies that some time ago when she was in the forest, she was just roaming around having fun when she suddenly heard some weird noises and went to investigate. To her horror, she spotted a person from the demon race who was short in height and had the head of a dog. Looking at her, she started screaming for help when the demon told her to shut up in his own language, which she understood, and she stopped screaming, scared of him. The demon gets surprised by this and asks her whether she could understand what he is saying, and she replies yes. Suddenly, they hear a bunch of noises coming, and the demon tells her to run away, as if the rest saw her, they would kill her. That was the last time she saw him, as she ran away from the situation. Liz looks at Soma and asks him whether he is planning on some sort of compromise between humans and the demons, as that is borderline impossible, as they have killed countless humans. But in retort, Soma tells her that humans have killed countless demons. He suggests that there is a possibility that this entire war is just a big misunderstanding, caused by the fact that none of the parties can understand each other at all. Liz thinks for a bit and realizes that he might be right. He tells Ark that Tomo must be given royal level security immediately, and that he must make sure that she is kept safe. The minister, however, tells them that this will only bring more attention to her, as it would be very weird for a poor girl like Tomo to have royal guards protecting her at every turn. Soma thinks about it, realizes that he is right, and starts thinking about what could be done. The minister suggests that he could adopt Tomo as his daughter, and that should solve the problem, but then realizes that he has to marry someone before he can adopt her. So Soma suggests Liz's father adopt Tomo, which will make it normal for her to have royal protection at all times. Tomo, however, looks at them and interrupts, telling them that she already has a family who is living in the refugee camp and she is not leaving them. Soma smiles at her and tells her that obviously when she's adopted, Tomo's parents will become relatives to the king and will start living here at the castle alongside her. She lets out a yelp of joy and thanks them for everything that they have been doing for her. Later, while Soma was relaxing in Liz's room, it was brought to his attention that Poncho was back from his quest, and he immediately went to meet him alongside Liz. They all sit down, and Poncho thanks Soma for letting him use his royal wyvern, which made it very easy and fast to collect everything he wanted. The next dish that Poncho brings forth horrifies every single one of them. It turns out to be a slime monster. They all seem disgusted, but Poncho wears an apron and starts rolling out the slime flat on the countertop and cutting them into small noodle-like slices before he boils them in water alongside salt and adds a couple of vegetables and some stock. The finished product seems unappetizing to the rest of them, but Soma comments that the dish looks like ramen from his world and sits down to eat. He takes a bite out of it, is pleasantly surprised to know that it even tastes like ramen, and starts slurping noisily. Slowly, the rest of them also try it and start enjoying it. Finally, their broadcast ends with that, and it turns out to be wildly successful, as soon every single eatery in the area started serving all of the meals that they showcased, and soon they also started mixing things together to create new and exciting meals. Soma is called in the throne room by one of the guards who tells him that the Prime Minister is insisting on an audience with the king. So Soma goes inside the courtroom that defines Kaz and the Prime Minister both bowing down in front of him. He tells them to get up and speak their minds. The Prime Minister tells him that he feels that he should follow the former king's example and step down from his post to give the new blood a chance to shine and make the situation better by dealing with them with new techniques instead of following the old school method, as it doesn't seem to be working. Soma seems to be very surprised at this sudden resignation and asks him about his successor, as they need a Prime Minister who is as smart as him and as wise. The minister, however, tells Soma not to worry, as he has taken Kaz as his apprentice and believes that he is ready to take the post of Prime Minister and can do excellent work in the future. Soma looks at Kaz, who is standing there, and realizes that he might very well be the perfect candidate for the job. He accepts the minister's resignation and appoints Kaz as the new Prime Minister. Kaz looks up at Soma and thanks him before telling him to take the entire day off, as he has been working non-stop, and if he keeps working like this, he will get burned out, leading to the decline of productivity in the ones around him. At first, Soma seems reluctant to take the day off, as he believes there's a lot of work to be done, but Kaz tells him that he needs to take the day off no matter what, and he can do the rest of the work. The next day, Soma decides to follow his advice and arranges a date with Liz, with Aisha escorting them. Liz at first seems shocked at the fact that Soma is taking a break and asks him whether he's okay. Soma tells her that everything is fine and that he just wants to unwind for an evening. Liz tells him that they shouldn't go out as the king and queen. She whips out a bunch of military school uniforms and hands them over to him while wearing one herself. They get Aisha as protection and then go inside the city. After roaming for a while, they decide to pay Juna a visit in her cafe and sit down in a booth to have some relaxing snacks. While relaxing on their seats and talking about the kingdom, they overhear a pretty loud conversation coming from the adjoining table, which is occupied by a fox girl and a red-haired guy. They seem to be having a heated argument, and they are so loud that Soma can't help but overhear their entire conversation. The fox girl is named Cade, and the guy is called Hal. They start talking again, and Hal tells Cade that he doesn't trust the new king at all, as he himself seems to be a very young and inexperienced person. So why should he follow someone who is around his age and probably less experienced on the battlefield? Cade, however, tells him to shut up and tells him that the new king seems to be a formidable person in terms of intelligence and strategy and is doing really good work. Hal, however, seems to have young blood and only wants war so he can prove himself in a battle and earn the respect of his peers. He tells her that he plans to go over to the Duke of Carmine and join his army. Cade seems horrified and tells him to never say that again, as the Duke of Carmine is in open rebellion against the new king for no reason. Hal, however, shouts at her that he will do as he pleases and he doesn't believe the new king is fit to be anything. At that point, Soma walks over to their table and asks Hal straight up why he doesn't like the new king. Hal looks up at him and asks him who the hell he is, but Cade seems to recognize Soma as soon as she sees him and gets very flustered. They all sit down at a different table and start talking again. Hal again tries to get in Soma's face, asking him who he thinks he is, but Aisha immediately grabs his hand, twisting it before grabbing his face in her palms and crushing it. Soma tells her to let him go, as that should be enough, while Cade looks at him, scared that Hal will get hurt. Soma then decides to quit playing and looks at Hal before asking him whether he still doesn't recognize him. Hal immediately realizes that Soma is the king himself, and quickly the tone of his voice changes. Soma asks him why he wants to go over to the Duke of Carmine, but Hal doesn't say anything out of fear. Soma looks at him and tells him that he will not tell Hal to stay with him, and he can and should do as he pleases. If he wants to go over to the Duke of Carmine, he should definitely do so, because you can't force anyone to follow you as they do so themselves. Soma, however, plays a mental game with him as he understands the underlying feelings of both Hal and Cade. He tells him that he needs to understand that once he is on the opposite side, he will have to fight against Cade, and if he decides to avoid coming into a head-to-head battle with her, someone else will. And if she gets injured, you will not be allowed by his army to protect her, even if she is dying and could be saved. He will not be allowed by his army to do so, and they will consider it treason. Hal decides silent thinking mode and thinks long and hard about it before deciding that he doesn't want to go on the opposite side and fight against Soma or Cade. Soma is glad to know that and thanks him before taking his leave. The next day, he sits down with Liz for tea and explains to her that he's getting good with his dark magic and can now control 4 inanimate objects alone. Before she could say anything, however, he was called to the courtroom because the head of the prestigious Magna House had come to meet him and request his attendance. Soma immediately goes over to meet with them and finds Hal, who seems to have gotten many injuries on his face. Glaive and Cade all present there, bowing their heads. He sits down on the throne, and Glaive immediately starts apologizing to Soma, telling him that he had no idea that Hal said all the things that he said and was only informed by Cade later. He tells Soma that he has disciplined his son and requests that he not take very strict actions against him. He promises that Soma has the unwavering support of the Magna family, and they will always stand beside him in all circumstances. Soma thanks him for his loyalty and tells him that he doesn't intend to punish Hal, and it seems like Glaive has punished him enough. He tells Glaive that he's going to take Cade in as one of the mages in his royal guard, and also make Hal an officer in his royal army, so they can remain nearby and assist each other. Several days later, finally, the bulk of the documentation has been finalized, and the remaining forms can be handled by using Soma's dark magic, so we shouldn't require any additional manpower now. He summons a meeting with everyone who has been handling documents for the whole duration, and once they gather, he delivers a generous speech about how they are the true asset of the kingdom, and only because of them he can begin focusing on the next initiative, which can guarantee the long-term survival of the entire kingdom and might even result in the food scarcity issue being resolved. He tells them to take a whole week off for their excellent efforts. He says he would have rewarded them with extra gold for everything that they did, but the kingdom is lacking in funds right now, so instead he tells them to go into the royal wine cellar, which contains the finest and richly aged vintage wine. He tells them that they can take a whole bottle each for themselves and do whatever they wish with it. They can trade it or consume it. It's up to them. The entire group of workers celebrates this, thanks Soma for his kindness, and hurries off to the wine cellar. Liz asks him whether it was wise for him to give them a week away from duties, as they still have a number of tasks to manage. Soma tells her to relax for a while, as the work is progressing at a solid pace. He informs her that he plans to establish a port along the coast of one of the villages, which will be a very tactical site to boost commerce in the kingdom, and build a trade town in the location where the village currently stands, offering employment to many individuals. He tells her that ships from other nations will have to pay levies and fees in order to conduct trade in their kingdom, and this will decrease the amount of unlawful trade done under their noses. Apart from that, he will impose small taxes on any ship that has arrived at the harbor to trade food grains at affordable prices, which will lessen the problem of food shortages in the land. He explains to her that everything relies on supply and demand, and right now the demand for food grains is at its peak, whereas the supply is down to nothing. The next day, Soma, Liz, and Aisha go to the small village where the development has to happen. Ark is already there and has pitched tents for everyone. He greets Soma, and when he inquires whether there have been any complications with the construction, Ark responds that many of the village seniors are firmly objecting to constructing a port on the coastline of their village at any cost. When he asks for the reason for this opposition, Ark suggests that the elders believe in a very ancient tale that says that if anything is erected in that zone, the water spirits will wreck the entire area by unleashing a massive creature made of water that devours everything. Soma appears intrigued and asks Ark to lead him to the elders who said that. Ark guides him to one of the homes where Soma meets with one of the seniors, and they sit down to converse. The elder again cautions Soma that if he builds his port there, the water spirits will surely retaliate and demolish the whole region. Soma asks him when the water spirits last destroyed anything and how they foresaw its arrival. The elder responds that it happened when his grandfather used to dwell here. According to the myth, just before the sea creature arrives, the earth begins trembling from its steps, and after some time, the monster surfaces from the ocean and consumes everything in its path, ruining all that they cherish. Soma reflects on it, decides to end the day, and returns to his fortress. He summons Kaz and Ark into his quarters, where they deliberate over this dilemma. Kaz looks at Soma and asks him whether he believes in the legend, but Soma replies that obviously he doesn't believe in a sea beast, but what he trusts is that legends are always rooted in some reality. He tells them that he has decided to relocate the spot for development and that he will be outlining the whole zone which the locals believe is cursed. Kaz cannot believe his hearing and asks him whether he's scared of some mythical ocean ruler. Soma replies that he is clearly not concerned about a sea ruler, but he thinks that what people are calling a sea beast is a tsunami, and when they say they feel the ground shake from its steps, they are misreading it as it must be an earthquake. He believes that the area must be very prone to a tsunami after a quake, and chooses to plan ahead and not construct a port that is extremely disaster sensitive. Soma's building efforts launch, and Hal is drained from all the physical work, so he starts to grumble harshly, asking Cade why the Forbidden Army has anything to do with road building. Cade tells him to hush and get back to work with a stern warning that he should dare not call her by her title because she's technically his superior. She then explains that the reason why the army is doing most of the building work is that there are too many roads to build and there's a shortage of labor, so the only way to make real progress would be to involve them in the effort. At lunch, Hal tastes a tasty burger that was made by Soma, and Kitty tells him that the fresh produce in the burger came from a nearby village, all thanks to a freshly built road. She further clarifies that the roads are helping lower food costs because there's now a higher supply, and Hal is amazed by their king's impressive vision. Just then, Soma walks in with Liz, startling both of them, and Hal quickly stands up to salute the king, but he orders him to stop being so formal and to call him by his name because he's glad to have found a fellow his age to chat freely with. As they stroll on the new roads, Soma explains the method of road making to Liz, who has never seen how they are formed. He tells her the basic ingredients used in building roads, shows her the streetlights which are fueled by some glowing moss plants for nighttime brightness, and the guard trees which were planted to briefly shield the village against the entry of wild beasts. Suddenly, a message bird interrupts their talk and brings a note to Aisha. In the note, her father informs her about a fatal landslide which buried half of their village, leaving many unaccounted for. Aisha is clearly shaken and calls out to Soma, but he handles the matter by thinking clearly. Instantly, he directs Cade to gather a squad, including herself, to act as the first relief unit that will go with him to the Dark Elves' village. He gently reassures Aisha, but tells her that instead of weeping at a moment like this, she should prepare herself to join them to her village, since they were all outsiders and needed guidance. Finally, he tells Liz to rush to the castle, organize another rescue group, and tell Hakaya to deliver aid supplies to the Dark Elves. Soma asks Aisha how long it will take to reach her village, and she says it will take them 2 days using a standard army pace. Now he is seriously concerned about the timing of their arrival, explaining that if they allow a 3-day span to pass between the event of the disaster and the arrival of the rescue force, the fatality count will be raised. Like an answered prayer, one of their rare rainers runs past, and Soma gets the idea to use them in moving his rescue group to Aisha's village while he travels with the royal wagon. They finally get to the village in the evening, and Aisha's father begins to praise the king and then introduces himself as Woden, but Soma tells him to skip the formalities for a better time and requests a briefing on the current condition. Woden tells Soma that 100 lives were lost in the incident and 40 individuals are still to be found. Soma tells him to gather a list of the lost persons, and each name will be erased from the list once they are located. He also tells Woden to have someone monitor the mountain for shifts in case another landslide happens while they're on the aid mission. To achieve this, Aisha offers to serve as lookout, and her father is at ease with her staying there because she knows the woods like the back of her hand. After the meeting, Soma speaks to his search and rescue crew, urging them to apply their road building abilities for good use, as they will need to dig the terrain in order to fully look for the missing people. When they begin digging, Soma suddenly halts and dashes toward a downed tree log, saying he can hear voices, but Hal is puzzled because he can't hear anything. However, when Hal later digs the area, he is stunned to see a human hand, so he pulls the log away and the person is extracted from the earth. Hal is amazed that Soma could sense someone was buried there, so Soma shows him the wooden mouse that was crafted for him to detect missing persons in places that were too narrow for his rescue squad to enter. Soma managed these mice using his magic by linking part of his mind with them, just like he did with the pens and the mannequin. In the end, the search wraps up and all the villagers have been found, so Woden thanks Soma for his prompt aid, even though sadly a number of lives were taken. Suddenly, one of Woden's daughters arrives to say that the princess just came with the second aid team, but a man weeping in the corner says it is too late. Soma explains that even though it is late, there were other jobs being done by the rescue team, such as caring for the injured and rebuilding broken structures. Yet this man tells him that all their efforts will still not bring back the dead, but Woden immediately interrupts him and tells him to be quiet before explaining to Soma that the young man was his younger brother Rob, who had lost his wife to the disaster and that his only daughter was currently in a critical condition. Rob cries bitterly because he protected the forest with so much dedication, so he couldn't understand why it had killed his wife. Woden comforts him and tells him to mourn his loss without putting the blame on anyone. Later, Aisha tells Soma that Rob was one of those who had opposed the thinning of trees that he earlier proposed and wonders if that might have contributed to the landslide. Soma explains that the disaster was merely a case of bad luck, in addition to the high frequency of rainfall. As they head back to the palace, Liz apologizes for being unable to do anything helpful, but Soma says that he feels more useless because he should have planned for disasters like this ahead of time. He also tells her that he regrets being completely focused focused on fixing the food shortage problem that he has paid no attention to other important matters. Days later, Juna checks in on Soma and finds him surrounded by a lot of papers on his bed, so she tells him that Liz had complained and is worried about his unhealthy sleep habits. Soma says that it is because his mind has been preoccupied with a lot of things, so she walks to his bed, sits beside him, and asks him to lie down. As he does, she places a palm over his forehead and caresses it lovingly, telling him that it is understandable if he doesn't want to look weak to the princess, but he can call her whenever he feels worn out. To her surprise, Soma is already fast asleep, so Juna smiles and sings sweetly to him while he sleeps. Meanwhile, an argument ensues between the leaders of the dukedoms. A lion-headed man called Duke Carmen insists on overthrowing Soma as king because he is unfit to rule their kingdom. The Duchess Excel is confused by this, commenting on how much Soma has done for their land, but Carmen says that Soma has been neglecting important matters and firing all their loyal service chiefs in the name of combating corruption. The Duke has no intention of ruling the king himself and only wants the former king reinstated because of his loyal commitment to the throne. The other Duke is named Castor. He's also willing to rebel against Soma and is clamoring for war before Soma gains the affection of everyone. Excel warns them both that other kingdoms like Amadonia would want to use their rebellion against Soma to attack the kingdom, but Castor said that Amadonia was willing to send reinforcements against Soma. The Duchess is not convinced by their offer because she believes that they sent a similar offer to Soma as well, because they want to cause confusion in order to attack Elfrieden when their soldiers are all in battle. Suddenly, Castor's daughter named Carla burst into the room and declared that if her father was fighting Soma, she would fight by his side no matter the consequences. Gaius, the mischievous ruler of Amadonia, is glad to hear that Carmen has accepted his invitation to go against Soma, calling him a foolish old man because he is going to cause confusion by sending Carmen reinforcements to fight Soma and sending Soma reinforcements to fight against Carmen, just as Lady Excel had suspected. His son, Prince Julius, backs him up, but his daughter, Princess Rora, is totally non-supportive of their plan and only envies the land of Elfrieden, which keeps flourishing by the hour. At the palace, Soma consults Hakia about a proposed plan to use violence in order to protect their kingdom. Soma is originally against the employment of cruel measures, but his grandfather's final words ring in his ears, so he chooses to protect those whom he now considers his family. With a decisive tone, Soma orders that they kick off their plan to subjugate. On the other hand, Gaius orders his army to invade the Elfrieden territory, specifically the grain city of Altamora, while he assumes that Soma is fighting against the dukes. Gaius says that it is high time they regain the land that was stolen from their ancestors 50 years ago. But before he finishes his wonderful speech, a minister, Colbert, comes running and interrupts him. Colbert bows and tells him not to begin a war because it would plunge his people into starvation. But Gaius walks hobbling and kicks the poor guy on his face. Still, the minister reminds him that they are under the Mankind Act because they signed a treaty. Gaius and his son are too stubborn to listen to Colbert, so they dismiss him. Colbert comes out looking like he just came out of a boxing ring, and he meets Gaius's daughter on his way, who tells him that she plans to escape the kingdom and that he should get ready just in case things go haywire. Before he knows it, he says goodbye to Gravity. Meanwhile, Soma sends for Liz to ask her for a special favor. He does what we call a video chat with the three dukes. After the introductions, he tells them that if they continue to rebel against him, he would be forced to recognize them as traitors. Excel asks him what his intentions are concerning the duchy, and he says that he only wants to unite their respective armies under his command, with no intention of harming them individually. But Castor is against this idea because he fears that it might harbor corruption. So Soma tells him that uniting the armies will give them better chances of winning against their neighboring enemies like Amadonia, and trying to convince Castor that he will not allow corruption to breed under his rule. So Soma tells him to come for his head in the event that he fails and becomes a corrupt king. At the end of their argument, Lady Excel pledges her allegiance and that of her entire army to Soma, but Castor and Carmen stand by their decision, saying that the previous king didn't consult them before handing the throne over to Soma. Castor says that he is not joining forces with Carmen and would rather remain impartial. When Carmen finally speaks, he tells Soma that he remains firm on his decision because he had to maintain his dignity as a warrior, and after some intense exchange of words with the Duke, Soma makes a request. He asks both Carmen and Castor to agree that if any of them is defeated, their men will become faithful to the victor. Finally, Liz cuts her hair while the Dukes are still observing. They exhibit her resolve in battling by Soma's side. Juna shows up beside the Duchess, and Soma thanks her for being the reason why Excel was on his side. Liz also assures him that he has the full support of the others as well. On the day of battle, Gaius yells a war cry for his army to commence their surprise assault of Elf Iden. He arrives with his army at Altamora and Elf Iden, where he commands one of the timid lords of the city to open the city gates. The man begs for some more time because the Forbidden Army is split into a faction that favors Gaius and another that won't hesitate to smash his skull. For this reason, Julius advises his father to trick the guard, so he promises not to harm any member of the Forbidden Army if the soldier lets his army pass through. But Gaius is being such a deceitful bastard, and he plans to murder the man once he opens those gates. Meanwhile, Soma has already established a fortress at the entrance to his realm with the help of Cade's earth magic and the efforts of the other builders. Now, the opposing army is doing its best to demolish the walls, so they switch from the futile use of bows and arrows to the deployment of colossal cannon launchers. Once they fire these, their cannons create dents in the walls of the fortress, and Hal asks Cade to use some of her magic to repel the assaults, but she says she can't because she exhausted it all in erecting the walls. Just in time, a dark elf named Sir appears from nowhere and shoots an arrow at one of the cannonballs, splitting it instantly. He conveys his appreciation to Hal for saving his daughter from the landslide debris, and that his daughter says she will grow to be like Hal, although that pretty much annoys him inwardly. Ark commands the royal army to charge only toward the cannons, paying no mind to the enemy troops. This turns out to be a success, and when Carmen gets word about it, he is surprisingly composed. He tells the officers of his army that their tactic with the cannons has proven futile, and that he has a superior strategy. Knowing that he had 40,000 men to clash against Soma's 10,000, Carmen says that he would have to entice Soma toward his army because it is evident that Soma was not present in the city at the time of the attacks, as shown by the marked defensiveness of his army. With a sinister look on his face, Carmen asks if everything is ready to execute his cunning master plan. On the other hand, Gaius believes he's about to seize the city of Altamora, and his son announces for the troops to get ready, but they are stunned to hear war cries. Lord Weiss returns looking more horrified. He says that he has failed to persuade the more aggressive half of the army to settle down, so he offers Gaius some gold dust in exchange for his forbearance. He implores Gaius to wait until the next day to initiate his assault when the shadow of the trees is cast upon the bags of gold dust. By that time, Weiss plans to win over the other half of the army to support Gaius. Eventually, Julius convinces his father to comply with Weiss's appeal. It turns out that Weiss is not a traitor of Elfiden, but has been secretly collaborating with Excel. He's worried about the significant amount of gold they might forfeit to Gaius, but the Duchess tells him that there is some prudence in buying time with the gold, as Soma had envisioned. However, if Soma doesn't show up by midday, they are as good as doomed. While these lovebirds are at dinner, she rests her head on Hal's shoulder and tells him that if they can survive the ongoing war, they can overcome anything else. Despite her timidity, she tells him to shield her like an egg, ensuring her safety throughout the conflict. The next morning, Carmen's army is still struggling to wreck the fortress, but Cade observes that the foes have adopted a new formation. This is good news because it means that they are attempting to have a more direct clash, much to the benefit of the Forbidden Army. On the other hand, Gaius and his son return to the location where they made a deal with Weiss, and seeing that the terms he agreed to have been fulfilled, Gaius commands them to strike. At the battlefield, there's a sudden surge of wyverns rushing swiftly toward the fortress in a way that makes Hal think that they are reinforcements coming to aid Carmen's army. Well, a lot has been happening behind the curtain, and the night before, here's what occurred in the Red City. Castor's right-hand man came to inform him that the city had been cleared and the air forces of other lands were aiming to collaborate with him, but he was totally uninterested because he was unwilling to share the credit of his uprising with anyone else. However, he began to view Soma in a more favorable light, although it was too late for him to alter his actions. He was troubled about the fact that Soma could pull a surprise move on him, given the concealed nature of his whereabouts at the moment. While they are still conversing, Carla bursts into the room to tell her father that Soma's troops had been detected, but it is startling to know that there is only one ship visible. Just then, Soma requests a video call with Castor while the ship is being hauled toward the Duke's castle. Immediately, it begins to launch cannonballs toward the fortress, and Castor is amazed to see that Soma was able to execute such a creative tactic. Soma gives Castor a chance to join the victorious side, but he says he isn't going to ruin his reputation in such a shameful manner as capitulating. Soma bids him farewell, and Castor tells his daughter to silence the damn cannons with great speed. Carla directs the Air Force towards Soma's ship with the intention of apprehending him alive, so they get into an impressive formation and fire at the ship, but it counters their attacks, much to their astonishment. One of the strikers finds that the wheels of the ship are not that sturdy, so Carla commands them to strike it, although she has it in mind not to strike any part of the ship that could harm Princess Liz, just in case she's aboard the vessel. They're finally able to stop the cannons from firing, but when they get there, they receive the greatest shock of their lives. There are no enemy troops in sight, only puppet hands. It was at this moment that Carla understood the ruse that was played. The ship had been a decoy away from Soma, who was headed towards his primary target. Castor, seeing that Soma has made his way into the castle, is surprised and curious to know just how Soma managed to sneak in. Soma tells him that he found secret passageways by going through the schematics of the Red City. After the introductions, Castor tells Soma that he can entrust his faithful aide Tolman to lead the Air Force in the event that he lost to Soma. Appreciating his extent of care for his personnel, Soma gives Castor a final chance to yield, but he draws his blade and tells him that real men do not easily retreat. Aisha immediately steps forward with her sword and tells Soma to step aside, but Castor mocks him by asking him to face him directly if he truly is a champion. Swiftly, Aisha swings at his weapon with her much larger blade. He dodges the assault and calls her a little child, but she tells him that she has been alive for decades. With a powerful swing, Aisha hurls him into the wall, and Castor is impressed at her savage strength. Aisha tells him that she doesn't mind being a naive girl as long as she possesses the might needed to safeguard Soma, so he wonders just how good a man Soma is to earn this level of fidelity. Suddenly, Liz appears from nowhere, launching a surprise strike at the prince and using her sorcery to surround him in an ice trap. Aisha quickly breaks through the ice with her sword, hitting Castor and sending him to the floor. The princess feels pity for Castor, but he tells her that he fought valiantly, and even though he has been vanquished, he still retained his dignity. He asks Liz if Soma is a worthy king, and she tells him that he is kind to her to the extent that she can battle her father for Soma's sake. As they hear the sound of their warship exploding, Liz immediately places a slave collar on Castor's neck, telling him that if the collar detects him attempting any harm to its master, who happens to be Soma, it will tighten on his neck and his head will roll. Soon after, Carla walks in and is horrified to see her father lying on the floor in a slave collar and immediately draws out her sword. Liz quickly warns her about the collar and tells her that if she does anything foolish to Soma, her father will pay for it with his life. Soma keeps to his end of the bargain and temporarily appoints Tolman as the commander of the Air Force, but under the leadership of the Forbidden Army. Tolman is ready to serve, although he's inquisitive about what will happen to the Duke and his daughter. Soma tells him that he's going to assess their case after the conflict, but until then, Tolman would have to assemble the force to announce that they are now under a new directive before heading to Carmen's duchy. On their way back, Liz begins to say favorable things about Carla, calling her a good and loyal person and hinting at the fact that she might have an attractive body beneath the ugly armor she's wearing. Soma gets the message, realizing that Liz is leading him to spare Carla's life and take her as a mistress. But Soma is worried about losing the faith of the people by disregarding the offense of insurrection committed by Carla. To support him, Carla tells Liz not to beg for her life because Soma actually sent them numerous messages to reconsider, but they rejected them. Back to Elf Iden's fortress, as Cade and Hal watch the Air Force coming toward them, Cade immediately knows that Soma won the battle against the Castor. Tolman orders the force to strike Carlin's castle, but avoid damaging residential zones. Soma and Hal commend each other for being successful in carrying out their strategy, although they both face struggles in dealing with their foes. Observing their dialogue, Carla is shocked to see that Hal speaks to the king in a very casual tone, and Liz tells her that Soma is really cool with it. Meanwhile, Carmen's commanders bring news about the destruction caused by the assaults of the Air Force and are asking what steps to take against the force that betrayed them. After hearing that Soma now holds full command of the skies, Carman sees that his citizens are essentially captives at this point and realizes that he has lost to Soma. His generals, however, cannot share the same view because the army is untouched and they can still use the innocent villagers as human shields while they hide in the fortress. These selfish ideas stun Carmen, and he's able to finally uncover the true character of the generals he had been defending. He surprises them by having slave collars placed on their necks, so they'll have to plead with Soma to spare their lives. Carman also asks his trusted aide to place the slave collar on his neck and proclaim his full capitulation to Soma. A message got to Soma that a peace flag was raised in Randall, and Soma's devoted supporters were amazed to discover that the war was over that quickly. Old man Carmen is seen holding an extravagant bottle of wine, which was given to him by King Albert. He planned to drink himself into a stupor whenever Liz would be getting married, and said that he cherished the gift above anything else, but now he knows he might be apprehended and never live to witness that day. Interrupting his soliloquy, Beowulf bursts in with good news, saying that Soma was not invading the city and only took Carmen's army along with him to a remote destination. This delights Carmen so much that he raises his bottle in tribute to Soma and Liz. Carla is baffled by the turn of events, so she demands an explanation from Soma and Liz. They tell her that the entire scheme was orchestrated by Duke Carmen. Soma tells her that he never intended to confront the Duke, but the only one who was initially on his side was the Duchess, by virtue of her granddaughter's relationship with Soma. And despite his lack of support for Soma, Duke Carmen surprisingly had his own hidden plans to expose and confront the corrupt officials in his army, so this worked for the overall advantage of the entire kingdom. He apologizes to Carla because, unfortunately, her father was not included in the covert plan, for fear that if it leaked, Duke Carmen's sacrifice would be meaningless. Carla says she understands after hearing that Carmen had risked his life for all of this to occur. We're back at Altamora with Gaius and his foolish son. They're planning to teach Weiss a lesson, but they see someone climb onto the wall, and Gaius is astonished to see that it is the Duchess. After a while, he figures that she probably had been there the whole time and was in close contact with Soma. His son quickly realizes that they've been deceived and tells his father that they have to retreat instantly. Suddenly, Excel creates a portal that broadcasts Soma as he announces that he has triumphed in the Civil War and is now in complete command of all the armed forces. He also reveals Gaius for manipulating the conflict to his benefit by trying to seize control of Altamora as the battles progressed. So he declares war on Gaius and tells him that the Forbidden Army is headed towards the Amadonian capital, Van, to reduce the city to ashes. Word reaches the Princess of Amadonia that her father's army was ambushed on their way back to defend the city, and half of their troops were wiped out by the Forbidden Army. Julius and Gaius, however, managed to gather an additional number of soldiers from the surrounding villages. But by the time they reach the capital city, Elf Iden has already captured it, hoisting their flags and banners everywhere. Seeing this, Gaius is completely disheartened as he thinks that the whole of Van has been taken. But his son spots the castle and notices that there are no Elf Iden flags there, so he commands them to eliminate the Forbidden Army. Soma loves the sound of this because it means there there will be a direct assault, so he commands the army to engage them, and Arc instructs his troops to get into a special formation. The battle begins, and the rival armies fight with intense brute force, but Cade alters the game when she uses her magical abilities to trap some of the Amadonian soldiers, while Hall sets devastating fires on them. All the while, Soma is puzzled about something. Carla wishes to know what troubles him so much, so he tells her that he feels that if things get really brutal, he might have to abandon his pride and beg for the lives of his men to be spared. However, he has realized that lately he has been behaving more like a king, even though he feels like a coward for despising the thought of bloodshed. In this spirit, he decides that he has to stop acting like a provisional king and embrace the role of the fully recognized king. On the battlefield, Gaius realizes that he has made a grave mistake by sending his already weary soldiers into battle, so he tells Julius to flee because they have been vanquished. Even though Julius is reluctant to abandon his father's side, he eventually flees the battlefield with a group of soldiers. Soma is notified that Gaius is charging directly toward him with a smaller army of elite fighters, although the main army has withdrawn. He then tells Carla he would be transferring the slave collar's control to Liz, and his final wish, in the event that anything should happen to him, is that Liz will become the next ruler of the kingdom. Carla refuses to comply with such a foolish request because she can defeat Gaius if Soma commands her to. So Soma gives the command, and she takes off. Arc sees the army approaching and hurls his spear toward Gaius, and when he examines the body closely, he realizes that he had been deceived and that it was merely a body double. Carla, on the other hand, quickly identifies Gaius and initiates the attack. He easily blocks it, causing them to be locked in a stalemate as both are equally strong. But suddenly, Soma's puppet appears from nowhere and lands a strike on Gaius, which he finds quite amusing because he doesn't understand how a puppet is meant to defeat him. That moment, Soma tells Carla to step aside, and when Gaius draws closer, Soma controls his puppet to block the blow with a counterattack while simultaneously instructing Carla to ignite the puppet. There's a loud detonation after Gaius is set ablaze, and Soma rushes to see if Carla is alright, but she's furious that he's on the battlefield, exposing himself to being killed, which would bring so much sorrow to Liz. Shockingly, Gaius emerges from the flames and still charges toward Soma, even though he's not really in the best condition. As he advances, multiple arrows are shot at him, but they don't stop him from hurling his sword at Soma. Luckily, the sword lands just a few inches from Soma and doesn't injure him, and Gaius finally collapses, dead. Soma is impressed by the valor shown by Gaius and his warriors, so he says that their tale should be recorded in their history books. Princess Rora is delivered the sorrowful news of her father's death, so she spends some time alone and sheds a few tears to grieve her foolish old man. The next day, Liz discovers that Soma had actually been intending to take over Amadonia for quite some time, but is astonished that he managed to keep the casualties at the border minimal. He says that he was advised by Haki not to evacuate the villagers living at the border for fear that the Amadonian troops would easily detect his next move. He then tells her that he devised a fake assault of fiery creatures to frighten the villagers away, so they would be forced to leave the area without actually initiating a formal evacuation. Ark informs Soma that Rora had departed the city with the finance minister and some delegates, and Julius left with some soldiers towards the west. So Soma requests for some administrators to entice the officials back to the land because they were crucial in the progress of Amadonia. Next, Poncha reports that the Amadonian treasury didn't contain enough stocked food, but instead held a surplus of weapons. To this, Soma says that the weapons will be traded, while food will be distributed across the nation until conditions normalize. If there still isn't enough food to share, he will have to import some from their own kingdom as a matter of urgency. Another official reports that the Amadonian soldiers are in high spirits, and this would simplify the takeover of other towns of the kingdom. But Soma says he wouldn't be capturing any other city because he wasn't prepared to deal with excessive resistance from the Empire. In fact, he already knows that they are coming for him because he violated the Mankind Treaty made to unite humans against the Demon Kingdom by utilizing military force to occupy the capital city of Vance. Since Amadonia is a signatory to that pact, the Empire may go to great lengths to reclaim it from him. Liz wonders why he still didn't sign the treaty after realizing what would follow, but he tells her that the declaration came with a hidden clause that could fracture the Empire in the future. Since the war, there has been so much hostility and resentment towards the Elf Iden Kingdom, so Ark wonders if Soma has arranged anything to ease the animosity. Coincidentally, Soma summons Juna, and she looks really stunning in her navy attire. He then tells her that he invited her to execute the next segment of his scheme, a project named Lorraine. Later, a newscaster is seen on the broadcast, and she says she will be reporting news about daily affairs occurring in the kingdom of Elf Iden and its surroundings. It seems like Soma has arranged some sort of entertainment event next, because Aishia is dressed in a beautiful gown, which makes her slightly uneasy. When Soma appears with her on the screen, the people of Amadonia are astonished to see that it was such a young man who had defeated Gaius. Soma goes on to announce that they're hosting Elf Iden's first musical performance. Then he introduces a young girl on stage. She performs her charming little song, and Juna is the next person to showcase. While Juna is performing, Soma pulls Aisha aside to tell her that he has invited a surprise singer to perform next on stage, but he wants Aisha to guard his back. Without hesitation, Aisha pounds her chest to say that she will protect him with her own life. Soma awkwardly averts his gaze gaze after noticing her plot cannons bounce like that. Juna's presentation truly delights the audience, and Soma invites his mystery guest to perform. He introduces her as Lieutenant General Margarita of Amadonia, who will be performing the Amadonian national anthem. The crowd is stunned, and a short silence follows, but as soon as she begins singing the anthem, they all stand in honor. As soon as she finishes, she tells Soma that he can now chop her head off. However, Soma surprises her by saying that he has no motive to, and she's astonished because the Amadonian anthem is basically a song about reclaiming their lost land from Elf Iden. Still, Soma tells her that Elf Iden has no such ridiculous laws against the anthems of other nations, and that a great nation is one in which everyone can freely sing whatever they desire. Meanwhile, Soma's prediction about the Empire is about to be fulfilled. At the forefront of the Mankind Treaty is the Grand Chaos Empire, led by a very gorgeous and kind-hearted woman called Maria, who is also known as the Saint of the Empire. Now, Maria's sister Jean tells her that she's heading to the occupied city of Van to negotiate with Soma for the liberation of the city so that they can preserve the dignity of the Empire following his recent victories. We're back to a lot of documentation, and our hero realizes that he has excessive burdens to shoulder following the recent acquisition of Van. The good news, though, is that the citizens of Van have a renewed desire to recover after many years of oppression. War sees that ever since power was taken from her father, the people have experienced a sense of liberty like never before. She's fairly sure that they won't grant her brother a shot at the throne, and all of this is thanks to Soma, because after his motivating speech on the broadcast, he set out to reduce taxes and increase the flow of goods. She, however, plans to make Soma pay for what he had done to the capital and to her family. Soma is informed that there's an army heading in their direction, so he asks to be updated if anything arises. At that moment, he is joined by Poncho, who brings him an enchanting lily plant, which has some hallucinatory effects, but most importantly contains the lily roots, food items of immense value. However, in order to harvest the roots, people made use of Orangins, who were known addicts to the hallucinatory effects of the lily plant. Soma asks if there are any Orangins in Amadonia, and Poncho tells him that there are, and he has already contacted Tomo to negotiate a deal with the Orangins, where they will be given barrels of weed in exchange for their labor in harvesting the lily roots. After organizing everything, Poncho prepares some stew with the lily roots and serves it to the people, giving them some to take home as well. Later, Soma, Luna, and Tomo are in the market, and Soma wears a hat to conceal his identity. When Tomo runs off to go shopping, Luna pulls him closer and holds onto his arm, assuring him that he is well protected and safe with her. She suggests that they go shopping for his adopted younger sister Tomo, and when they reach the shop, he tells the little girl to pick whatever catches her eye. Luna follows her and picks out some beautiful dresses for her, but Soma picks out an ugly pair of shoes. The minister uses a military analogy to tell him that men and women bargain differently, so Soma gets the hint and leaves it all in Luna's hands. Soma asks why he had to use a military analogy, and he says that lately he has had to deal with a charming but cunning little devil, which we all know to be the Princess of Amadonia. After shopping, Tomo is seen wearing a lovely dress and carrying a bag filled with more clothes than she can handle. She is delighted and grateful to her older brother for the present, even though the shoes are quite hideous. Soma also presents a ladybug hairpin to Luna, and she becomes flustered as she thanks him. Luna tells him to get presents for Liz and the others, and he tells her that he got a gift for everyone. He also tells her to skip the formalities and call him by his name, so she leans into him and calls him a naughty flirt. They stop by one of the stalls to grab a quick bite, and Tomo falls asleep on Soma's thighs. A few minutes later, a newscaster forecasts that the weather will be sunny in both Elf Iden and Van, making it perfect weather for them to do their laundry. Suddenly, a female voice from behind them says, "It's amazing to see the gemstone broadcast being used so creatively," and when they turn, they find that it is Gen Euphoria, leader of the Empire's military. Seeing that her guards have overpowered his, Soma tells her that she must be brimming with so much audacity to have casually walked into his territory. Luna steps forward to protect Soma, but Jean says she means no harm and only came to confirm if all the rumors she heard about Soma were true. She tells him she heard that Soma was a wise ruler who had turned the economic situation of a bankrupt kingdom around, who devised a long-lasting solution to the food shortage problem by using creative means to prepare appetizing meals that people generally did not like. After that, she says that she also heard that he was a pathological womanizer who, despite being engaged to the former king's daughter, was still gathering the kingdom's most beautiful women and creating a royal harem with them. Luna isn't surprised and even giggles because she had also heard the same rumor, but our dearest hero is speechless to realize the kind of reputation he has. Jean tells him that if the rumors are false, then her plan wouldn't work because she planned to use her beautiful sister to plead with him to release the kingdom of Amadonia. After hearing about his weakness for beautiful women, Soma is surprised that Jean was willing to use someone as reputable as her sister, who was even known as the Empire's saint, to carry out such a scheme. However, Jean tells him that her sister doesn't like being called a saint because she's anything but a saint. Maria, however, doesn't mind the title if it has a desirable effect on young men like Soma. Hearing this, Luna comes up with her own silly title, Songstress, and asks Soma what he thinks of the name. After a while, Jean tells Soma that he is an amusing king who gets along really well with his officials, which is enough evidence that his kingdom is genuinely stable. Jean tells them that for the same reason, her sister Maria is being called a saint, although everyone has kept a healthy distance from her. Also, Maria is deeply committed to her duties and treats everyone equally, and this is the reason for her involvement in asking for the release of Amadonia, because otherwise, she has nothing to gain from helping them. Jean thinks the news broadcasting thing is cool, so she asks for Soma's permission to do something similar in her country. She wonders how he was able to come up with such an innovative way to use the gemstone broadcast, so he tells her that it's actually a pretty common thing in the world from which he comes. Immediately, Jean bows to Soma, apologizing on behalf of the Empire for summoning him from his world. Soma tells her that he knew the Empire had no need for a hero, and he was only summoned to serve as a human sacrifice on behalf of Elf Iden. The kingdom of Elf Iden was not a signatory to the Mankind Act, but they were somehow beneficiaries of it. However, due to the weakening state of their economy, they couldn't afford to contribute as much as the neighboring kingdoms, so they had to summon a hero as a sacrifice to the demons just to make it seem like they were actually doing something serious. Jean says that no one expected the hero's summoning to work or for things to improve for the Elf Iden kingdom, but Soma had proven them wrong. Now all Soma wishes to do is protect his newfound family, and he hopes that Jean will accept his jurisdiction over the land of Amadonia. But she says that she also has a family to protect, so Soma tells her that they will have to negotiate in order to reach a compromise. Jean says she hopes he will take it easy on her and immediately turns to leave. Somehow, it feels like the so-called negotiations won't be as easy as expected. When they return to the castle, Tomo excitedly shows off her new dress, and Soma gives Aisha the lipstick he got for her. Aisha is thrilled about her present and hopes to become more feminine for her darling king. As Liz watches all this, she burns with envy until Soma gives her a beautiful necklace, which looks really good on her. As Soma watches this family sharing joy and laughter, he strengthens his resolve to protect them at all costs. To all Leaf Village ninjas, that is it for today. Recap: do not forget to join our clan, our army, my friend. You can do that by clicking that red button below the video. Destroy it for me with that bell. To follow us in YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.